Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska, where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Hey, thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody, and welcome aboard Must Read Alaska, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. And today it's in Anchorage, Alaska for me. And if you like this show, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review. If you really have some kind words for us, we always appreciate a short review. That helps us tremendously when you do that. It improves the rankings of our show and all the apps like Apple and Google Play. So for all the latest news, I want to make sure you also remember to go over to mustreadalaska.com. And we've got 4 or 5 stories up there, news stories every day, because we're really pumping out the content. It's all good political content for Alaska, really sort of taking it from the conservative side of the news. We like to balance out the mainstream media, and we do a good job of it over here. I'm Suzanne Downing. I'm really glad to be joined today by my co-host on the Kenai, John Quick. And as usual, John, I believe you're in Nikiski today, and you always have something to tell us about what kind of crazy stuff is going on in Kenai politics.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. John Quick here, coming to you live on location from the Kenai Peninsula. And there is some rumblings this week. The school board has their school board meetings, once or twice a month, and the next one's coming up here in the next couple of days. And there are some rumblings that there was going to be a group of folks that are going to show up en masse. Now, most people listening to this that are on the Kenai Peninsula or anywhere except for Anchorage might think to themselves, well, that's not a big deal. There's no mask mandate on the Kenai borough. There's no mask mandate across the state. Well, the school board has put itself in the position to mandate masks in all school functions, including school board meetings. And so 2 or 3 weeks ago, a Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly member showed up not masked and was forced to leave by the school board. And so there's some rumblings that we're going to get a group of folks to show up and see what they do. It's a place where we want to exercise our freedom of speech and our freedom of expression. And there's no statewide mask mandates, so there's not much they can do besides shut down the meeting. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because if you saw what happened in, I think, Vail, Colorado last week, was people from the community came to a school board meeting where they were forcing kids to wear masks all the time, and the school board was overwhelmed and outnumbered, and they left the meeting. And supposedly, folks voted in, because of Robert's Rule of Order, new school board members, and immediately took away the mask mandate on location there because they never chimed out of their meeting. And so, I don't think something like that's going to happen here on the Kenai Peninsula, but you never know. People are getting sick and tired of these mask mandates for our kids and our teachers and our parents that show up, and so. We'll see what happens.
I'm just dying to hear about this meeting. What day is that meeting? Do you know?
It's this week sometime. Generalities.
Okay.
I speak in generalities.
Yes, you need to send me a text about when that meeting is. I have a full tank of gas, man. I am coming down there. I got to straighten you people out and put masks on all of you, because that is just not appropriate. How dare you take off your mask? Oops, wait a second. You're on the Kenai. You get to do that, because you don't have mask mandates, except in your school board meetings, right?
Yeah, they try to sneak it in wherever they can, and
are the kids wearing masks in the schools there?
The kids are wearing masks in the schools still. We are stuck with a lame duck, if you will, superintendent who only has maybe a month or so left, and he's not going to budge. He's made it adamant that he's has a political kind of juncture in this, and he's not going to move the ball or the needle any which way, no matter what parents say. So we do have a new superintendent coming in, which I believe that the borough mayor it has a good amount of faith in that he's going to be able to work with this person, at least have a conversation. the current superintendent refuses to even have a conversation with the mayor. So
Bad idea. Boy, I tell you, having a conversation with Charlie Pierce is one of the best things anybody will ever do. That guy is brilliant, and he's just so down to earth. He is just so, he's willing to listen, but he's not willing to listen to nonsense. And I really like the guy. So you send me the time and date of that school board meeting, and I might just hop in the car and drive on down. The road goes both ways. I can make it there. I sure can.
well, that'd be
And
fun.
so, yeah, so good for you guys. And hey, before we head on to a different topic, I want to get back to this this thing that happened in Homer. That's your neck of the woods in a little bit. And that's the raid on the family down in Homer by the FBI. But before we do that, I was thinking that maybe you could just tell us a few of our really great bragging rights that we have for Must Read Alaska, because we've been doing so incredibly well. And I just want people to know that we work hard over here. We work really hard. For me, it's a good 15 hours a day of work. For you, I probably 7 or 8 at least. And I just, give people some of the good news about Must Read Alaska and how we're doing.
So first, I want to piggyback on kind of what you said earlier, is that if folks are listening to this, or they have friends that read Must Read Alaska or Must Read Alaska's articles, or folks that have downloaded our app, or folks that have downloaded our podcast, I want to encourage you to donate, because the mainstream media all across Alaska is well funded, and they are funded by different, nonprofits or foundations, if you will.
That's
and
true.
They have staffs of 5, 6, 7 to 10 folks, and big budgets, and they have a bunch of full-time writers, and they have full-time marketing people and executives and accountants, and the list goes on and on. We have a couple of people that are doing this. Suzanne is full-time, and then a couple other folks that kind of chip in as they can.
You and Scott, basically, that's it. And basically you got one writer and a couple of really brilliant young people.
Yep. And we make it a priority to, if you go on to other news sources websites all across Alaska, the popular ones, they have what's called a paywall, where you cannot go and read a story without paying for that service. We don't do that. And so we believe that this information should be, excuse me, Scott, you might have to edit that out. We believe that this information should be free to the public. And so Suzanne writes a ridiculous amount of articles every day.
Really, that's
and
true.
has
Ridiculous amounts.
Some amazing columnists that chime in every week, and it's free to you. And so if you have experienced some fruit in reading this, I want to encourage you to go to mustreadalaska.com and donate, because this literally can't happen without the good folks of Alaska donating $5, $10, $50, $100 at a time. So one of the things that we just reached was 16.2 million views on our website since May of 2016, which is just huge number for us in Alaska. And Suzanne has approved something like 78,000 comments. And take that's our website. Now times that by 2 because of Facebook, and then add YouTube and add all these other things. We have a pretty big beast that we're managing on a daily basis. So we're excited to be reaching a lot of people. We just launched our Must Read America, which is a kind of a sister company, if you will, of Must Read Alaska. So Suzanne we have a partnership with Newsmax, which is the most popular conservative news source in the entire US. We have a partnership with them, and Suzanne has a column with them called Must Read America. And so we decided to launch Must Read America. You can go to mustreadamerica.com, and we're going to be talking about national stories on Must Read America. We're just getting started there, so we'll add way more content as the months progress.
Sure.
But we're excited that that's launched.
Well, yeah, and if you're a listener to this show, then you're sort of getting the inside scoop on where that's going, because Must Read America is just getting out the door here. But we that's the place where the national stories will go. And we're also looking for some good content writers there to cover national news that's mainly of interest to Alaska, but also of interest to things like that conservatives in Alaska are interested in, but aren't solely exclusive to Alaska. For instance, Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights, on and on. And for instance, things that involve the Supreme Court, things that involve land use across the West, and just the national politics today. And of course, as we head into the next election cycle, we all know that the race in Alaska for the U.S. Senate race for Lisa Murkowski's seat will be a huge story around America, and all of our content will go on Must Read America as well, so that we can sort of expand our scope a little bit. Well, listen, we've got some other good topics. I want to talk about the mayor's race here in Anchorage and where the momentum is going. And I want to also talk to you about, I hear from you, especially John, about the FBI raid in Homer, like I said, and maybe a little bit about what Senator Dan Sullivan said today when he was speaking in the legislature, if we have time. Speaking of the mayor's race, however, just will be in an hour or so here. I'll be heading down to Bernie's bungalow downtown in Anchorage, where there's yet another fundraiser for Dave Bronson. I'm waiting for that Bronson APOC filing to show up on the Alaska Public Offices Commission website, because I know they've been raising some good money. And I just saw an amazing IE that showed up on their filings, an independent expenditure group called Conservatives for Bronson, and they put like $84,000 in. And what I understand is the McKenna brothers have their trucks, and they've got these signs on their trucks for Bronson, and they're just driving around their trucks around town with these Bronson signs on them. So they had to kind of sit down and say, what is the value of that? And how do we create an independent expenditure group? And how do we report it to APOC? And apparently it's all on the up and up, because I know as I looked at the filings, I see that Cheryl Frasca did the filings for them. So they're going to be clean. And they're so these McKenna brothers trucks are driving around town with signs on them, and the fundraiser is happening down at Bernie's. And over the weekend, I ran into Dave. I went down to South Anchorage, where a bunch of people, like 50 people down there, they gathered, had garbage bags and gloves, and they went and picked up garbage on the roadside for its annual citywide cleanup. It was an amazing event. They filled a massive dumpster, like 2 dumpsters full of litter from the roads. And our roads up here are just so littered right now. It's just, I've never seen it so bad. Another 50 people for Bronson were knocking on doors on Saturday. And I just heard today that they have actually done 20,700 doors and calls across Anchorage and Chugiak for this cycle alone, that's since April 6th. So for the runoff election alone, they've hit over 20,700 doors and calls. So that is really impressive. A lot of momentum. On Sunday, there were about 50 door knockers out as well through the neighborhoods. And then a person wrote in, I just noticed on their campaign site on Facebook that a person from Peters Creek said, hey, we're really glad you knocked on our door. We usually get ignored out here, but you guys are the first people ever knock on our door. Thank you so much. And so really seeing a ton of momentum on the Bronson side. On the Forrest Dunbar side, he was at a vaccine event up at Northway Mall, and it really looked a little bit anemic. He was just kind of by himself, and he got a couple of pictures with some people, but there wasn't any big momentum there. I mean, you go see Forrest Dunbar is going to give you a shot, your arm's going to feel bad for a while. You might get sick, go to bed. I don't know. It's not a great brand, but we're doing a series on him, on fact checking Dunbar it's called, because this guy says he's running a fact-based campaign. He's going to be fact-based in his governing of Anchorage, which is, by the way, that's 1/3 of the state, or more than 1/3 of the state. 38% of the state is here in Anchorage. So it's a big job. You're a mayor of Anchorage, and you are really running a lot of the state. And so it's such an important election. And he says he's fact-based, and the rest of us are just anti-science. He believes that conservatives are actually anti-science. This is what they believe about us. But so we thought we'd just go ahead and fact check him. And he said last week that the Anchorage budget could not be cut. And, we found out that actually since Mayor Berkowitz took over as mayor in 2015, he has increased the budget from $481,000 to $550,000. And I mean, it just goes up and up and up. And really, at the rate of inflation, it should only be at $540,000. So it's $10,000 more than it ought to be. And he says, Dunbar says that there's absolutely no place to cut. And plus, that doesn't even count the new alcohol tax that they put in, the new gas tax they put in, and all of these bonds that voters keep voting for. I don't know if the voters understand that when they vote for these bonds, along with that comes something called the maintenance and operations, and that is outside the tax cap. So they are signing up to pay for the maintenance and operations of these facilities for the life of the bond and then some. So we're just saying that, on this particular issue and on several others, we found Dunbar to be fact-free. There are places to cut that budget. We do have to cut somewhere. And what Dunbar wants to do is he wants to grow government. And what Dave Bronson is saying is that, all these people that were shut down by Anchorage policies over the past year, but still required to pay property taxes for their businesses, maybe those people ought to be getting a rebate or a tax cut in some way, because they have been the ones who have taken the brunt of this. There isn't a single government worker who's lost their job, right? Not a single one.
I think it's a very clear distinction. You have one guy, Dunbar, who's been the guy that enforced and stood by and approved and sometimes came up with all of these COVID policies to destroy the economy in Anchorage. He's behind every single one of them.
20
and then
times.
And then he comes to the table, a week or so ago, and votes to relax the mandates in Anchorage, which is just a joke. All that is political nonsense, because 2 weeks before that, he said he was going to be fine with extending it well into the summer, and that he was going to vote in favor of extending these emergency orders. And then he realizes, well, crap, Bronson's kind of on my tail here. He actually won the popular vote. And, I might lose here, so I better do something real quick. And all this is a political move to try to gain some more votes. But this is the guy. Dunbar is the guy. If you're listening and your business has been affected, he is the guy that was fine with bankrupting your business. He was the guy that was fine with forcing your 2-year-old to wear a mask at all times. He was the guy to sit and belittle people while they gave public testimony. And I would love for somebody to do a public information request on personal text messages between Dunbar and Constant, because you would see, and they have to give them up. There's no, I had to do it when I was chief of staff for the Kenai Peninsula Borough, hand over my phone. They would have to give them up, and you would see a string of them belittling and being very, very sarcastic, probably, towards everybody that's come against them publicly during an assembly meeting.
Yeah, well, we've already seen that in their email messages that we did get through public information requests, just really treating the public like they're a bunch of idiots, and also saying, look, we gamed them, we forced them to the table, that kind of thing. But this is true. 20 times he's voted to keep the city locked down, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks before the election, where it looks like he's going to lose, he decides, okay, we'll just open it back up. Everything's opened up. And this is at a time during this past year, we went from like a 13% Class A office space vacancy rate, and now we're at 18%. It's the highest level ever measured in Anchorage. We've never had 18% vacancy rate in our Class A office space, and yet these people are still having to pay property taxes at the same rate, even though the economy has crumbled around them, and it's not their fault. I mean, this is city policy that's done this. So I just think it's, Scott, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I can't sit by and just listen to this garbage in terms of the Dunbar thing. I will tell you this. If you actually look at his 10-point plan, it's pretty preposterous. I know Dave and I last week talked quite a bit about it. The thing that really gets me is the number one point in that whole plan was 70% vaccination rate. And Dave clearly articulated that's almost mathematically impossible to do. So his economic plan starts out with something that's almost not feasible, and it continues to go on. I mean, talking about getting 10 new businesses to come up here to set up shop with an office space for remote work. I mean, it just goes to show you that how much effort was put into this economic plan, when the whole point of remote work is that you don't have an office.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's really true. And this is a guy who's actually never been in business. He doesn't know what it takes to run a business. Good point, Scott. Thanks for jumping in on that. But it's going to be really interesting to see where we go in the next couple of weeks, because he's understands that he's starting to slip. that his message is hollow, it's not falling well with people, and that Dave Bronson is just an average guy, and he's just trying to help his city. He's a commercial pilot. He's a former, he's a retired Air Force bomber pilot. Who's cool, calm, and collected. And he says he's just sort of simple caveman guy, wants to get the city up back on track. And he's catching fire in Anchorage. It's really interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about this Homer raid that we had. We saw the FBI went into a house in Homer last week, broke down the door. The door is still broken at Paul and Marilyn Cooper's house. They're on Catchback Bay. And John, I know you get down to Homer quite a bit. And what do we know about Paul and Marilyn Cooper? Are they people who broke into the Capitol and stole Nancy Pelosi's laptop like the FBI thought they were?
No, I mean, this is it's really unfortunate because both of these folks are contributing members to their community. Paul is a precinct leader for the Republican Party. They both own and operate a very popular inn down in Homer, where literally they have guests from all over the world come and stay. They did go to DC to see the president. They did not storm the Capitol. And some of the reports that I read were just astounding to me. Again, they have to be fact checked, but from what we heard firsthand from this couple was they didn't really get a clear picture of what the warrant even was. It was kind of flashed in front of them at various moments, but they never got an opportunity to actually physically sit down with the warrant and read it.
Right.
The FBI did kick in their door. It would seem appropriate if you're going to, people's house to, inspect whatever they want to inspect. You might want to just try knocking first, because Paul and Marilyn would have probably just let them in.
Sure.
These are very decent people. And the responses that we have heard, with the articles that you've wrote and other folks have wrote, was Paul and Marilyn kind of were nonchalant about it during the interview process. And one of the things that Paul said that the FBI asked him, they was like, doesn't this lady's your wife, isn't she? This is her on the picture. They had a picture of a lady that looked like Marilyn that went into Nancy Pelosi's office, presumably, and took a laptop, and they were grilling Paul about, this is her, isn't it? This is her. This is your wife. And he's like, well, it kind of looks like her, but my wife's a heck of a lot hotter than that lady in that picture, and Marilyn made the joke to them that, I would never wear a coat like that. You'd have to pay me $1,000 or something to wear a coat like that around. And, I think they probably messed with the wrong folks, because these are not like reclusive, hide in the woods, build a bomb shelter. These are people that are out in the community, and people are really up in arms. You saw the Governor Dunleavy do a statement that he was going to look into it. It didn't seem right. And that he was going to make sure that all state statutes were followed and not broken. You saw Senator Sullivan say that he was going to call the director of the FBI and kind of get the backstory on it. So, it looks like that they shipped up a bunch of FBI agents to do a raid on some folks that are successful business owners that happen to be at a Trump rally. And that's probably not the best look for the FBI to have.
Not at all. But the thing about it is then I wrote a column about this today, and it's up on mustreadalaska.com. And I think you're putting it up on Must Read America too. We've seen federal agents going Waco on us here in Alaska, and we've got instances, and that's probably a really bad idea for them. They just don't seem to be learning their lesson, because all of us are really well armed up here. Somebody comes busting through my door, it could be not good. And I mean, it's really a good thing this didn't devolve into a Waco situation, because most people aren't going to put up with somebody just busting through their door. If you just say you're police, how do I know? I mean, that's just not the way I've ever been treated before. So I think that, more information will come out on this. But when we think back to what the FBI has done before, remember, they went and they raided Ted Stevens' house in Girdwood, and then they indicted him for all this, several counts of failing to disclose the remodeling costs of his house down there. Bill Allen was staying there, and he was paying for remodeling. Bill Allen never submitted all the receipts to him. He just kind of it was a sloppy deal, but the senator said, look, I was ready to pay them, but I just didn't have they nobody submitted them. So I would have paid them. And ultimately that was thrown out by a judge who said that the FBI had withheld information from the courts that would have been, exonerated him. And well, that was too late already. Ted Stevens had lost his trial was a week before the election. He lost his election because he was painted as corrupt. It was really sad. And then after that, he was exonerated. All the charges were dropped by the Department of Justice, and that was in the Obama administration. I will give him credit for that. And then, after that, one of those FBI guys actually ended up committing suicide. I mean, it was such a shameful thing. The whole thing was so shameful. And then, looking back in 2007, same year as that raid, we remember that John Sturgeon was on the Nation River up there in the Yukon Charlie Preserve, and these armed agents from the Park Service, of course they're armed up there because there's grizzlies and so forth. They told him to get out of his boat and he would have to find his own way back, but he couldn't move his boat any further because he was on federal land. Well, he's not. He was on a river. Rivers are state managed in Alaska. And if we are prevented from using our rivers by the federal government, those are our highways. And so it was quite a case with the John Sturgeon against the Park Service in the Yukon Charlie Preserve. It went all the way to the Supreme Court and he won. He won not once, he won twice. He had to go twice, cost him $1.2 million just so he could go to his moose hunting ground with his boat. I mean, you can't get out to moose hunting ground without your boat in a lot of places. And then in 2013, you remember the miners were up in Chicken, Alaska, right there on the border of Canada near Eagle, Alaska. And these ATF and FBI agents came swooping down on their placer mining camp with their guns drawn, and they were in bulletproof vests, and they were going to find out that these guys were violating the EPA Clean Water Act. And there were like 13 or 14 of them, and they all just roared into these camps, scared the bejesus out of these miners, because I mean, they're just the last thing you expect when you're in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you've ever been to Chicken, Alaska. I know you haven't, but it is in the middle of nowhere, and it's a great little place, population 12. But, this is the kind of thing that we have seen before. And that's why when it happened in Homer, I think it just rubs us the wrong way when the federal government treats us that way. It's not a good look up here.
Nope. I will tell you a 1-minute story of when a U.S. Marshal saved my life.
Okay.
I was 16 years old. Me and some friends were in a car, and no joke, a group of folks got out of their cars and surrounded us with swords, real swords.
Like samurai swords, or
like samurai swords. We're 16 years old.
Or like big, sword and the stone swords.
Like big samurai swords. Like they surrounded, there's like 6 or 7 guys surrounding our car with samurai swords. And we're like, what are we going to do here? We're boxed in. And out of nowhere, a U.S. Marshal comes along and draws his weapon and tells these guys to put down their swords. And he comes up to our window and knocks on the door and he goes, yeah, we've been following these guys for some time. You guys can just get out of here. I'll take care of it. And he flashed us his U.S. Marshal badge, and U.S. Marshal saved my life that day.
What state was that in?
That was in the great state of Washington.
Okay, that's crazy. That's a crazy story. That is one for the grandkids. That's all I can say. Hey, everybody, before we go, for the rest of the week, just please sign up for the Must Read Alaska newsletter. You can sign up right there on mustreadalaska.com. And you'll also get Club MRAC, which is the daily bulletin from the halls of the Capitol. And I'm working on tonight's issue right now as we speak. And be sure to tune in on Wednesday or Thursday mornings, I guess Wednesday night, Thursday morning. Usually it's up by Wednesday night, to the Scott Levesque edition of the Must Read Alaska show. He does a great job. He is a rock star on Wednesdays. So if you're a supporter of us, thank you so much for your support. It really makes it possible for us to stand up for what's right in Alaska. If you'd like to support the conservative side of the news, you know what to do. Just the right side there at mustreadalaska.com. There's a button, and just push that and donate what you can. And that allows us to stay strong, independent, and thoughtful here against the liberal activist news media. So until next time, we're signing off from somewhere in Alaska.